It was a simple act of kindness, a moment that seemed insignificant at the time. But little did she know that $5 would change her life forever. Carmen Alvarez was just an ordinary young woman in her mid-20s, living in the heart of New York City. She wasn't rich or famous, just kind-hearted. Every day she worked hard at her small roadside milk stand in Queens, trying to make ends meet. It was a late autumn afternoon, the busy hum of the city surrounding her, when she first noticed him. A drifter boy appeared out of nowhere. His clothes were worn, his shoes were falling apart, and his face looked tired, like he hadn't had a decent meal in days. There was something desperate in his eyes, something that caught Carmen's attention. As the bustling city moved around her, Carmen felt a sudden urge to do something. She didn't have much to give, but she knew she couldn't just stand there and do nothing. She decided to help him. Carmen didn't have much herself. Her days were long, and her earnings were just enough to get by. But when she looked at Max, standing there with tired eyes and worn-out clothes, something tugged at her heart. For a moment, she hesitated. She thought about the bills waiting for her and the groceries she still needed to buy. Could she really spare anything? But then, without thinking twice, she reached into her pocket and handed him $5. "Here," she said softly, "get yourself something to eat, and stay safe." Max's hands trembled as he took the money. His voice cracked with emotion. "Thank you," he said. "One day, you'll know how much this meant to me." Carmen smiled and went back to her work, thinking it was just another small moment in her day. Little did she know, that simple act would change both of their lives forever. 15 years had passed. Carmen, now in her 40s, had a bustling business in the city, a loving family, and a life she had worked hard to build. But even with all the changes, she couldn't shake the memory of that boy from so long ago. Sometimes, when she was alone, her thoughts would wander back to that autumn afternoon. She could still see his tired face and hear the gratitude in his voice. His words echoed in her mind like they were spoken yesterday. "One day, you'll know how much this meant to me." It was just $5, a tiny act of kindness. Yet, it left a mark on her heart, a reminder of how one moment, one choice, could ripple through time in ways she could never predict. One crisp afternoon, a man approached Carmen's stand. He was tall, dressed in a sleek suit, and carried himself with quiet confidence. His polished appearance stood out against the usual hustle of the city. He stopped in front of Carmen and said with a warm smile, "Carmen Alvarez?" She nodded, puzzled by his presence. "I'm here because of something that happened 15 years ago," he said, his voice steady but full of meaning. Carmen tilted her head, trying to understand. Then he added, "My name is Max Rivers. You might remember me as the boy you gave $5 to all those years ago." Her eyes widened in shock. The scruffy, hungry boy she'd helped was now standing before her, a completely different man, confident, well-dressed, and successful. Max gave her a knowing look. "That small kindness you showed me, it changed everything. Let me tell you what happened next." Max, standing tall and confident, began to share his story with Carmen. He told her how, on that cold autumn day, the $5 she gave him wasn't just money, it was a lifeline. He used it to buy a warm meal, something he hadn't had in days. But more than that, it gave him hope. It reminded him that kindness still existed, even in a city as tough as New York. "That meal wasn't just food," Max said. "It was a spark. It made me realize I couldn't give up on myself." With a renewed sense of purpose, Max found work at a small restaurant. It wasn't much, but it was a start. From there, he climbed his way up, taking every opportunity he could. Over the years, he saved money, learned new skills, and eventually started his own business. Now, Max was no longer the struggling drifter Carmen had met. He had become a successful entrepreneur, known throughout the city for his hard work and dedication. But he never forgot that day. Never forgot the kindness of a stranger who believed in him when no one else did. "That $5 didn't just change my life," he continued. "It taught me the value of giving back. Over the years, I've made it my mission to help others, just like you helped me. Every time I help someone, I think of that moment. Your kindness started it all." Carmen listened, her eyes filling with tears. She couldn't believe the impact of her small act of kindness. Max looked at Carmen with a smile that held years of gratitude. "That $5, he said, his voice steady, "was the seed that changed everything for me. It wasn't just money, it was hope. It reminded me that even in my darkest moment, someone cared enough to believe in me." Carmen listened, her heart full of emotion. She had never imagined that such a small act could mean so much. But then, Max reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to her with both hands, his eyes filled with sincerity. When she opened it, her breath caught. It was a check, an amount so large it left her speechless. She stared at it, then looked back at Max. "I can't accept this," she said, shaking her head. "I didn't help you for a reward." Max smiled warmly. "I know," he said. "That's exactly why you deserve it. This isn't just for the $5 you gave me, it's to show you what your kindness started. That small act didn't just change my life. It allowed me to help countless others over the years. This check is a reminder of the power of one simple gesture." Tears filled Carmen's eyes as she held the envelope. She wasn't sure what to say, but in her heart, she felt the weight of what Max was saying. Her small kindness had created a ripple effect, changing more lives than she could ever have imagined. Max's voice softened as he revealed something that took Carmen completely by surprise. "I'm not just a businessman," he said. "For years, I've been supporting charities, funding education for kids who couldn't afford it, helping shelters for the homeless, and mentoring young people who are struggling to find their way, just like I was." Carmen's eyes widened as she listened. Max wasn't just sharing his success. He was showing her the massive ripple effect of her $5. Her small gesture hadn't just changed his life. It had set off a chain reaction that touched the lives of hundreds, maybe thousands. "All of this," Max said, "goes back to that one moment. Your kindness reminded me that even a small act can spark something big. It inspired me to do the same for others." The weight of his words hit Carmen like a wave. She realized that her decision to help a desperate boy all those years ago had grown into something much larger than she could have imagined. As Max prepared to leave, he turned to her one last time. "The world is full of people who need kindness, Carmen. Sometimes it's a big gesture, and sometimes it's something as small as $5. But every act matters. You taught me that." With that, he walked away, leaving Carmen standing there, overwhelmed by the realization that her small act of kindness had truly made the world a better place. Carmen stood quietly, holding the check, her thoughts swirling with emotions. She finally understood how much her small act of kindness had mattered. That $5 wasn't just a gift. It had sparked something far greater than she ever imagined. Looking at the busy city around her, Carmen felt a renewed purpose. She made a promise to herself to keep helping others in whatever way she could, knowing that even the smallest gesture could leave a lasting impact. She returned to her milk stand, her heart lighter and her mind clearer. This wasn't just where she worked, it was where a simple decision had changed lives. "You never know how much a small act of kindness can do," she thought. "Sometimes it changes more than one life. It changes yours too." If this story inspired you, like and subscribe for more. Your kindness could change someone's life too.